I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well.
What if I told you that the world's most successful hedge fund manager believes we're standing at the edge of an economic cliff that could make 2008 look like a minor correction? What if the man who predicted the last financial crisis is now warning of something far more catastrophic than a simple recession? Ray Dalio, the billionaire founder of Bridgewater Associates, has managed over $140 billion and built his fortune by understanding economic cycles better than almost anyone alive. And after months of relative silence, he's finally speaking out about what he calls the most dangerous financial moment in nearly a century. Are you prepared for what's coming? Because according to Dalio, most people aren't even looking at the right warning signs. Here's a number that should terrify you. $36 trillion. That's America's national debt right now, and it's growing by over $1 trillion every single year. But here's what's even more frightening. Ray Dalio says this isn't just an American problem. This is a global debt crisis that's about to reshape the entire world economy. Think about this for a moment. When you max out your credit cards, what happens? Eventually, you hit a wall. You can't borrow anymore. You face bankruptcy. Now imagine that happening to the world's largest economies simultaneously. That's exactly what Dalio is warning us about. The United States currently spends $1.8 trillion more than it earns every single year. That's like a family making $50,000 but spending $60,000 annually and doing it year after year. How long can that possibly last? Ray Dalio didn't become a billionaire by guessing. He became wealthy by studying history and recognizing patterns that repeat across centuries. And right now, he's seeing a pattern that absolutely terrifies him because he's seen it before. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing, and we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are very much like the 1930s, Dalio warns. Let me break down exactly what he means, because understanding this pattern could be the difference between protecting your wealth and losing everything. In the 1920s, just like today, America experienced massive debt accumulation. People borrowed to buy cars, homes, and even to speculate in the stock market. Sound familiar? Companies expanded using cheap credit. The government spent beyond its means. Everyone believed the good times would last forever. Then 1929 hit. The debt bubble burst. The Great Depression followed, lasting an entire decade and changing the course of world history. But here's what most people don't realize. The debt crisis of the 1930s wasn't just about money. It fundamentally altered the global power structure, destroyed currencies, and led directly to World War II. Dalio has identified 3 specific factors that signal when an economy is headed for catastrophic collapse. And all 3 are happening right now, simultaneously, for the first time since the 1930s. When a country's debt grows faster than its economy, it enters what economists call a debt spiral. Here's how it works. You borrow money, which requires interest payments. To make those payments, you borrow more money. The debt compounds. Interest rates rise because lenders get nervous. You need to borrow even more just to service the existing debt. The United States is spending over $600 billion annually just on interest payments for existing debt. That's more than the entire defense budget. And as interest rates rise, that number explodes exponentially. Dalio puts it bluntly, we cannot spend the amounts of money. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money. Just like in the 1930s, wealth inequality has reached dangerous levels. The richest 0.1% of Americans now control 20% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 50% have seen their share drop to less than 5%. This isn't just unfair, it's economically destabilizing. When the middle class can't afford to buy goods and services, the entire economy contracts. Consumer spending, which drives 70% of the US economy, collapses. History shows inequality leads to social unrest, political extremism, and economic chaos. Exactly what happened in the 1930s with fascism and upheaval. Dalio warns of a changing world order, with China challenging American dominance just as Germany and Japan did decades ago. This isn't about trade wars, it's about global financial control. China builds alternative systems and accumulates gold while the dollar's reserve currency status faces unprecedented threats. Most frightening, Dalio isn't predicting recession or depression, but complete monetary system breakdown with catastrophic consequences for America. The value of money. What is a storehouse of wealth? That is a bond. One man's debt is another man's assets. Dalio explains. We're going to be in a situation where if that storehouse of wealth is in jeopardy because there's too much supply and demand and we have monetary inflation, we will have great disruptions. What does this mean in practical terms? It means your savings, your bonds, your retirement accounts, everything denominated in dollars could lose massive value almost overnight. Think about what happened in Germany in the 1920s when hyperinflation destroyed the currency. People needed wheelbarrows full of money to buy bread. Life savings became worthless. The social contract between government and citizens collapsed. Dalio believes America could face a similar crisis if the debt situation isn't addressed immediately. The 3% solution, but is it already too late? Despite his dire warnings, Dalio isn't completely pessimistic. He believes there's still a narrow window to avoid catastrophe, but it requires immediate, drastic action. His solution is what he calls the 3% pledge. The U.S. government must reduce its budget deficit from the current 6.2% of GDP down to 3% or lower. That means cutting the deficit in half, from $1.8 trillion down to approximately $850 billion. If the budget deficit can be reduced to 3% of GDP, and these trade deficits are managed in the right way, this could all be managed very well, Dalio states. But here's the catch. Achieving this would require either massive tax increases, dramatic spending cuts, or both. Every politician knows this would be career suicide. Social Security, Medicare, defense spending, education, everything would be on the chopping block. The question becomes, do we have the political will to make these painful but necessary changes? Or will we continue kicking the can down the road until it's too late? If Dalio is right, and history suggests he often is, we're about to witness the most significant economic transformation in our lifetimes. The implications go far beyond stock market corrections or housing market adjustments. We're talking about potential hyperinflation that destroys savings, currency devaluation that makes imports unaffordable, social unrest as inequality reaches breaking points, possible international conflicts as global powers realign, a complete restructuring of the world financial system. The wealthy are already preparing. They're buying hard assets, real estate, gold, commodities. They're diversifying across currencies and countries. They're building economic bunkers for their wealth. But what about everyone else? What about the middle class who can't afford Swiss bank accounts or foreign real estate? Ray Dalio's message is clear. We are at a decision point. The path we choose in the next few years will determine whether we experience a manageable economic adjustment or a complete systemic collapse. How that's handled could produce something that is much worse than a recession, or it could be handled well, he warns. As Dalio puts it, it doesn't need to happen because there are certain things that could be done in which this is a better restructuring of these debts and actions taken. The window is closing. The debt is growing. The global order is shifting, and time is running out. Ray Dalio has broken his silence. The question now is, are you listening? Dalio's warnings are happening now. History shows prepared people survive economic collapse while others don't. What's your plan? Time is running out. Act before it's too late.